Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 4 of our conversion of the Revell U.S.S. Yorktown into the U.S.S. Enterprise. Had a bit of a hiatus there, but we are continuing to work on it, and we're going to be going over some detailing tips today that will help the model look a whole lot better, I think. And we're going to start off by an introduction to a handy little tool that you can make yourself that many of you may not be aware of. Okay, this little thing sticking out from the edge of my workbench is called a bench pin. It actually stems from the jewelry making industry, and as you can see, it's just a little piece of wood, a hole cut in the middle, place to be able to get a saw blade in and out. I've had this one for many years, and I use it almost every day. The bench pin, you can buy a bench pin if you want to, but the simple fact of the matter is you can make your own like I did. They're not terribly expensive to buy, but I prefer to make my own stuff when I can. A couple of different designs. This one right here makes it a little easier to cut off small points and be able to use a saw into the edge of it. I don't use this one very much, to tell you the honest truth. This one right here I use almost all the time. It just slides in, stays where I need it, allows me to do sawing through, drilling through, or and I can take it away and not use it at all if I need to get up close, like if I'm working with brass, etched brass, photo etched material. A lot of times that stuff likes to jump and fall on the floor, and if it falls on the floor, I will never find it again. So sometimes I like to be able to work up close or move it. Otherwise, it stays where it is. And it's a really handy device that I strongly suggest you make yourself one. I have done a little bit of work on it while we were away. One of the things I wanted to do was remove these panels that are in the model. See if I can get the camera to focus on that a little better. I left one panel to be able to look at. Yeah, that panel right there. I don't like the way it sits. It sits too close, and I don't like the paneling in there. So I want to replace that. And these smaller holes, all of these smaller holes here have a screened vent behind them. They were exhaust ports for different pieces of machinery. They were inlet ports to suck in air for other pieces of machinery to help keep the ship cool, and various things along that line. So what we want to do is I want to replace what they had in there, which was a bad looking piece of plastic, with something that looks a little more realistic, something that is a little more in scale and will actually look better. So I'll talk more about that when we get to doing them, but first I want to get rid of this final door here. These doors would raise and lower. I want to get rid of this one and replace it with another piece of plastic. First step was to take this actual entire edge here and sand it down to a thinner degree, because the plastic itself on this side, you can see I haven't changed it, it's too thick, and I want the door to sit closer to make it look more like the real hull plating. So I needed to sand down this entire strip using an electronic caliper, which is really a handy device. They're a little pricey, but you will not be sorry that you got one. I wanted to bring that down to 1 mil. So I measured it, and then I took a hard sanding stick and just started sanding the back of it. Checked it, sanded it, checked it, sanded, checked it over and over again until I got that down to about 1 mil. It's not exact. In some places it's a little over, in some places it's a little bit under, but it's close enough. It looks really good. So the first step that we want to do now is to remove that door. Getting a saw in here and trying to work with it is going to be really difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a drill and the bench pin to get to that point, get that out, and then we're going to use a file to clean up the edges. And then we will get into replacing the doors with something a little more realistic and a little more, well, believable, basically. Alright, I have a small carbide bit in a Dremel style extension cable. I like these a lot because it gives me a lot of room to move around and I don't have to hold on to a big heavy Dremel tool. I can just use the small part here. The carbide bit, you could use a regular drill bit in here. I just happen to have this and it's handy. What I want to do is drill a series of small holes around through the door so that it'll be easier to cut out and then file down. Doing this on the bench pin is a whole lot easier than holding it up like this and trying to do it, or even putting it on a piece of wood. This allows me to have the surface that I'm going to be doing the drilling on very solid. So I'm going to turn on the Dremel here, and this is going to make noise, so I apologize for that, but that's just the nature of the beast, and we will drill these holes out. I've got the Dremel running at a very slow speed because I don't want it to melt the plastic, I just want it to cut through. I am not going to the very edge, I'm staying back from the edge a little bit because I don't want to risk damaging the actual edge of the plastic door. I just want to get it close enough to be able to allow me to get an X-Acto blade in there and cut this out easily. Okay, as you can see, that's been cut out, and now I can take an X-Acto blade and pretty easily just go in through here. See, it's another nice thing about the bench pin is it gives a little extra support so that if I push down too hard here, I'm not going to break anything. I can lay it right on that opening and just gently cut through and be able to get this chunk out of here. Believe me, this is a whole lot easier than trying to get in with a saw. Okay, that piece is out. Now we can go at it with a file and clean it up. Again, I apologize for the noise, but friction causes noise. I'm getting it up close, not quite to the edge, but getting it up close so that I can finish it later. Another nice thing about a bench pin is that you can get in from underneath and be able to work on parts. These corners are rounded, so I'm going to want to use a round file in order to get right up to the edges. I want to do that very carefully because it's very easy to mess that part up. So just work slowly and take your time. That's really the key to any kind of model building, is work slowly and take your time. I have switched to a round file. I'm working very slowly to get it up to that curve. If I were to be filing all the way down with the file, the curve would be too big. So I'm only using the very front part of the file to work with to get down to that edge. Once I've got there, I move on to a different one. I can take that down a little further. I'll do that in a minute. Be careful with files because you can slip and put a gouge right across your model. Fortunately, I didn't. But that's what the dissolved putty is for. Fixing mistakes. Believe me, you will learn more from mistakes than you will from successes. Even if it's just, don't do that again. Finishing up the very top. Okay, now on examination I discovered that only that corner is rounded, the rest were square. And that is confirmed by some of the research material I found online. So that is done. I want to take a hobby knife and just very gently scrape off. I'm really not even putting any pressure on this. I just want to scrape off any flash that's left over on the other side. A little closer. Okay. That is cleaned up. It's looking good. Could do a little bit more of a touch up here. Just a little nub right there I want to take out. Okay, now the next step is to replace these with the vents, the vent material that we're supposed to be that we're going to be using in here. The big problem when you're trying to do something in a scale model is getting things to look in scale. I do have a little bit more cleanup in some of these little vents and things like that, but I want to show you what I'm going to use for the vents, for the different vents that are on there. Not the larger holes, but the small ones. As I said at the beginning, there was just a little embossed piece of plastic with little like screen lines in it that were supposed to represent the vents, and I didn't like them at all. I wanted to go with something more in scale and something that just would look better. And I decided to go with a real fine brass screen. This is some very, very fine brass screening material. You can probably find this at a good hobby shop, but I didn't get this from a hobby shop. I actually cut this out of an old reusable coffee filter. It was about $2 at the grocery store, and it had a couple of sheets of very fine mesh, a couple of very large sheets that I can work with. It cuts easily with a scissors, although I do have a little more of an industrial scissors to use. But it cuts very easily, and these pieces, once I trim them to shape, will go behind the holes. See if I can get a good focus on that. They'll go behind those holes, and they will look a lot more realistic, a lot better than that cheap molded plastic that was in there. I'm also going to be cutting pieces of plastic to go in the larger doors. You remember they had they were kind of cantilevered or sectional doors that could slide up and down. One of the differences between the Enterprise and the Yorktown is this particular vented door. This particular door on the Yorktown went all the way down like this, whereas on the Enterprise it only went down that far. I have no idea why, but I only cut out that much, and then I filled this area with putty. I also cut these two hatchways that are here. I just cut a very tiny little piece of sprue to go inside the center to help represent an actual hatch handle. It's got no detail on it, but at that scale it might not need it. If it's just a different color, it could work out. But for these doors that go in these places, I decided to go with a type of, I believe this is evergreen plastic. Yes, evergreen scale model plastic, and I can get it to show up on the camera. It may focus, it may not, but you can see, hopefully, that it is ridged plastic. It has a very fine grid pattern on it, and that will look very good behind these doors. I just cut a small piece and place it so that you can see. So you can place it behind the door here, get it straight, and that will look a lot better than what was in there. It'll look more realistic. It actually gives a better depth because when parts are embossed in, they have a curve, a radius basically, or a fillet, I guess is the term, around the edge. It's very difficult, especially on an old model like this, to get a really sharp edge. This gives you that sharp edge, which helps make it look more realistic. So I'm going to start cutting out pieces of plastic and pieces of the grid material, and I'm going to start placing them behind the various holes. And I'll be back to show you that process in just a second. I'm going to do some of them, and then I will save a couple and show you the process at the final result. Okay, I've got most of the screens in. I'm going to do the last two here. Just cut the screen material into very small pieces. Try to keep them as flat as possible. A little edge there. One more. And then to glue these on, some people will use super glue, CA glue and such. I just use a little bit of gloss coat lacquer. This is the Testors brand, and just put a drop right on top of it. It spreads out. It does not end up making the holes look bad. I'll get off. There we go. Clean that one up a little bit. And because it dries down and loses a lot of the filler, so that the holes for some reason do tend to stay, I don't know that they're staying absolutely unclogged, but they don't look like they're clogged, and they're going to be painted anyway. So I'm going to let this dry, and then we will do the plastic pieces to go inside these other holes. Okay, I've got these pieces done. I've got all the grid pieces in. Last piece here. I'm not worried about making a super precise fit as long as it covers the hole. That's all that's important. Okay. Lay that in and hit it with a touch of my homebrew model glue, the recipe of which is on the Amazing Plastic Google Plus site. If anyone is interested, it works as well or better than most liquid glues, and it's a lot cheaper, I guarantee you. Let me check the alignment real quick. Okay, I've got all these little white pieces of plastic in here, and they will be obviously painted, much like I painted these just with a little bit of primer. And in the next video we will start actually cutting pieces off of the sprue and starting to build the rest of the ship. So until then, thanks for watching.